Good morning, friends. Myself, Dr. Satish Farate. I am presenting before you the subject Financial Accounting and Auditing, paper number 7. The subtitle of the paper is Financial Accounting, which is applicable for TY BCom semester 5. We have prepared this slideshow with an intention of e-learning. The financial accounting subject is having a following syllabus. Topic number 1, preparation of final accounts of companies. Topic number 2, internal reconstruction. Topic number 3, buyback of shares. Topic number 4, investment accounting as per accounting standard 13. And last one is ethical behavior and implications for accountants. Today we will focus on first topic or module called as preparation of final accounts of companies. Let us see company final accounts. What do you mean by company final accounts? It is nothing but a final account of corporates, that is companies. Any company which is incorporated as a public limited company, private limited company, one person company, government company, foreign company, holding company, subsidiary company or any type of company is required to prepare its final accounts. That is called as company final accounts. It is also called as corporate final accounts. The final accounts of a company mainly consist of balance sheet and income statement or profit and loss account. What is balance sheet? In traditional form, if you want to speak, balance sheet is a statement of assets and liabilities. Usually it consists of two parts. The left hand side of the balance sheet is called as equity and liabilities in the case of companies, and right hand side is called as asset. In equities and liabilities, there are four sub-segments. Number 1, shareholders funds. Number 2, share application money pending allotment. Number 3, non-current liabilities. And number 4, current liabilities. In the case of assets, there are broadly two types of assets: non-current assets and current assets. Let us go for further analysis. As far as equity and liabilities are concerned, they are subclassified into four items. Shareholders funds. Now what is shareholders funds? Shareholders funds are the funds generated by the owners of the organization. Shareholders are nothing but owners of the organization. Say for example, equity shareholder, preference shareholder. These are the owners of organization who have contributed in the form of share capital. Therefore, these shareholder funds consist of three items or three segments. First one is share capital, second one is reserves and surplus, third one is money received against share warrant. Coming to the first one, share capital. Share capital is a type of capital contributed directly by the shareholders of the company, either in the form of equity share capital or in the form of preference share capital. Then reserves and surplus are nothing but the appropriated and unappropriated profits set up by the company or having generated by the company. Money received against share warrants. If a company doesn't have share capital but it has issued a warrants, against that warrants whatever money is collected by the company from the warrant holders or from the owners is called as money received against share warrants. These are also owners of the company. Second one is share application money pending for allotment. Now what is share application money? Share application money is a kind of collection made by company from the prospective shareholders on account of initial public offerings or right issue of the shares in the case of existing shareholders. And whenever this amount collected is not yet allotted towards share capital or not yet converted into share capital, till that moment this amount is called as share application money, and this share application money is also considered as part and parcel of your inflow of the funds. Therefore, share application money pending for allotment is as good as your liability of the company. Third one is non-current liabilities. Now what is non-current liabilities? The word itself indicates. Non-current means which is not a current, which is not a liability occurring in one financial year. Whenever a liability does not occur in one financial year, or its duration or longevity is for more than one financial year, then that type of liability is called as non-current liability. In non-current liability, there are following items. Number one, long-term borrowings. That is borrowings made by company from financial institutions, NBFCs, or any banking companies for long span of time, either for long-term purpose, that is for acquisition of assets in the form of term loans, working capital loans, as the case may be. If the loaning period or borrowing period is exceeding more than 1 year, it is called as long-term borrowings. Deferred tax liabilities. Deferred tax liability is a type of liability arising on account of timing difference on account of generation of assets or disposal of assets, such as depreciation impact or like that way. Other long-term liabilities. Other long-term liabilities are those liabilities which are other than long-term borrowings. And lastly, long-term provisions. Whenever any kind of provision is made for more than one financial year, it may be for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, then such provisions are called as long-term provisions. And these are also non-current liabilities. Next one is current liabilities. Current liabilities mainly consist of short-term borrowings, that is borrowings incurred for one financial year or less than one financial year. Then trade payables, that is creditors for goods and creditors for expenses. Then other current liabilities, which are in the form of outstanding expenses such as salaries, wages, or any kind of advances received from customers, as the case may be. And short-term provisions. Short-term provisions are those provisions which are paid or made for less than one financial year. Usually in the case of direct and indirect taxes, the provision for income tax is made for short span of time, that is either income tax provision or GST provision or cess provision, as the case may be. Next slide indicates company final accounts, second part, that is assets. Assets are broadly classified into non-current assets and current assets. Coming to non-current assets. Now what is non-current assets? Non-current assets are further classified into 5 categories. Fixed assets, non-current investments, deferred tax assets, long-term loans and advances, other non-current assets. And current assets are classified into current investments, inventories, trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents, short-term loans and advances, and other current assets. Now coming to the format of vertical balance sheet of a company. That means if you have drawn the vertical balance sheet as per Companies Act 2013, how it is to be presented? Mainly it consists of 4 columns. Particulars, working note number, current year rupees, previous year rupees. If previous data is year's data is given to you, then write previous year column. Otherwise, if previous year data is not available, then you can write only current year's column. Coming to the particulars, in the case of equity and liabilities, first part is equity and liabilities. In equity and liabilities, there is first part, shareholders funds. As far as shareholders funds are concerned, first one is share capital. Share capital is a type of capital which is reflected over here in the form of schedule of working note of share capital, which gives you the clear information regarding what is authorized capital of the company, what is issued capital of the company, what is subscribed capital of the company, what is called up capital of the company, what is calls in arrears, and what is paid up capital of the company. Such detailed information of the share capital is expected to be written in the note called as note number 1. This note number 1 will give you the information regarding entire information of share capital. That means at the time of incorporation of the company, what is its authorized capital? What is authorized capital? It is a nominal capital created by the company on its incorporation, which is mentioned in the memorandum of association under the capital clause, that This is ABC Limited has created a capital, authorized capital of rupees say 5 lakhs. That means 5 lakhs will be its authorized capital. That authorized capital also gives you the information regarding classification of share capital. That means out of total 5 lakhs, how much is equity capital, how much is preference capital, how much is debenture capital, and so on. A breakup will be given. It also gives you information regarding what is the nominal value of shares, equity shares, preference shares, debentures. Nominal value means maximum notional price a company can issue on its incorporation. That is also mentioned in the memorandum of association capital clause, and that capital amount is mentioned in the capital clause of the memorandum, and based on that the complete information of authorized capital has to be presented in this working note as authorized capital. Next to that, issued capital. What is issued capital? Issued capital means out of total eligible capital, how much is issued to the public, how much is issued to the shareholders in the form of issued capital, that is subscribed and issued capital. Out of offer to the public, how much is collected from the public? Is there any difference? Suppose I have called up for 3 lakhs rupees, but public has paid me only 2,95,000 rupees. That means there is a difference of rupees 5,000. That will be called as my calls in arrears. Therefore, calls in arrears is a difference between total called up capital and total paid up capital. And that calls in arrears is also deducted from your share capital. That's why share capital working note will give you the complete information regarding authorized capital, issued capital, subscribed capital, called up capital, calls in arrears, and paid up capital. Not only for equity share capital but also for preference share capital it will give the information. Now what is equity share capital? Equity share capital is also called as ordinary share capital. What do you mean by ordinary share capital? Ordinary share capital is that share capital which is issued to the ordinary shareholder of the company, whereas preference capital is that capital which is issued to the preference shareholder of the company. Now who is preference shareholder of the company? Preference shareholder of the company is that person who enjoys two different rights, additional rights over and above equity shareholder. That's why he is called as preference shareholder. The rights are namely number one, right to receive the dividend, and number two, right to receive the repayment of capital in the case of liquidation of the company. These two rights are exercised by this shareholder over and above the rights of ordinary shareholder. That's why he is called as a preference shareholder, and another one is called as ordinary shareholder. In the case of ordinary shareholder, these rights are not available to him, because if there is a loss, ordinary shareholder will not be entitled to receive the dividend. But in the case of loss also, preference shareholder is entitled to receive the dividend. That's why preference share capital, equity share capital, this total classification in totality is mentioned in working note of the share capital. Second sub item is reserves and surplus. What do you mean by reserves and how it is different from surplus? Reserve is appropriated profit, whereas surplus means unappropriated profit. And total of these two is called as your notional profit. That is total profit available to the business is further classified into surplus and reserve. Reserves are appropriation of the profit, appropriated profits such as sinking fund reserve, development rebate reserve, investment allowance reserve, debenture redemption reserve, capital redemption reserve, then statutory reserve, export profit reserve, general reserve, etc. All these reserves which are created for specific objectives, specific purpose, those are called as statutory reserves. There may be certain reserves which are generally created as a surplus, that is revenue reserves. And that part of the notional profit which is not in the form of appropriation but kept as a retained earnings is called as a surplus. That's why reserves and surplus in totality is nothing but flowed back capital of the company or indirect investment made by the company in the form of accumulated profits. Third one is money received against share warrants. As we have discussed, warrant holders are those persons who are not having share capital, but they have contributed for their capital. Such amount is reflected as money received against share warrants. Then second item is share application money pending allotment. Now what is share application money? It is an amount collected from the prospective shareholders of the company and pending for allotment of shares. That means application money is received. It is accounted for in the books of company, but question is, to that extent shares are not allotted, shares are not issued, and that's why this amount is called as share application money pending for allocation. It is a quasi capital of the company because this amount is not exactly called as share capital, but against this share capital will be issued on future dates. That's why it is a share application money pending for allotment. Third one is non-current liabilities. Non-current liabilities are again a long-term liabilities, that is liabilities payable for more than one financial year, in which long-term borrowings, that is borrowings for more than one financial year. Then deferred tax liability, as we have discussed right now, it is a liability arising on account of taxation of timing difference due to depreciation or any changes in the provisions. Then other long-term liabilities are other than long-term borrowings, which are in the form of loans from the financial institutions or NBFC, non-banking finance companies, or even individuals like that, etc. And long-term provisions, any kind of provision made for more than one financial year is called as long-term provision. Therefore, these are included in the long-term non-current liabilities. The next one is current liabilities. Current liabilities are again subclassified into four categories. Number one, short-term borrowings, that is borrowings from financial institutions or any other persons for less than one financial year. Trade payables, that is trade creditors for goods or creditors for expenses. Then other current liabilities, which are in the form of outstanding expenses such as wages, salaries payable to employees, and so on. Then short-term provisions, that is provisions for income tax, provisions for GST. Say for example, income tax for financial year 2019-20 is payable on 30th September 2020. That means within 6 months from the end of financial year we have to pay the income tax, and that kind of provision is called as short-term provision. Or say salaries and wages for the month of March 2020 are payable in April 2020. That means that 1 month's provision made in the balance sheet is called as short-term provisions. Therefore, in totality, these are the current liabilities. This is regarding first part of the balance sheet, vertical format, that is equity and liability. Second part of the balance sheet consists of assets. These assets are subclassified into two parts, non-current assets and current assets. As far as non-current assets are concerned, they are again divided into five categories. Those are fixed assets, non-current investments, deferred tax assets, long-term loans and advances, and other non-current assets. Coming to the first one, fixed assets. What do you mean by fixed assets? Any asset acquired by the business for more than one financial year is called as a fixed asset. There are four types of fixed assets. Number one, tangible fixed assets. Number two, intangible fixed assets. Number three, capital work in progress. Number four, intangible asset under development. Now what is tangible fixed asset? Tangible fixed asset is that asset which is identifiable, which can be verified, which is in existence, and which may be movable or immovable in the nature, such as plant, machinery, furniture, fixture, factory building, land. These are the tangible fixed assets. Some of the tangible assets are depreciable tangible assets. Some of them are non-depreciable tangible assets. Likewise, there is an intangible assets. Intangible asset means that asset which is not having its existence. In reality, it is a virtual, but it has its value. Take an example: goodwill, patent, trademark, copyrights, designs, software programs, etc. These are your intangible assets. Third one is capital work in progress. Capital work in progress means that asset under development, that type of tangible asset under development which is under construction but not ready for use. Now what is the necessity of making differentiation between tangible assets and capital work in progress? Why not it is added in the tangible assets only? The reason is that tangible asset is eligible for depreciation because it is ready for use in the business, whereas capital work in progress is not ready for use in the business. That's why it is not eligible for depreciation, and hence till the date of completion it is considered as capital work in progress or civil work in progress, as the case may be. Once it is ready to use in the business, it is converted into tangible assets. Same way in the case of intangible assets under development. Suppose patent or trademark or copyright is under development. It is not yet developed. Then whatever cost is incurred for its development will be considered as intangible asset under development. And once its development is complete, it's ready for use, then it is called as intangible assets in totality. Again, same point is here. Intangible asset under development is not eligible for amortization, whereas in general intangible asset is ready for eligible for amortization. Amortization means a kind of depreciation only. That is the fixed assets classification: tangible, intangible, capital work in progress, intangible asset under development. Then second type of non-current asset is non-current investments. Investment means what? Any kind of savings made by the company for specific purpose. That's called as investment. In the case of company, if investment is made by the company in the form of long-term assets, long-term investments such as shares, debentures, bonds, mutual funds, government promissory notes, GDR, ADRs, etc. for more than one financial year, then that is called as non-current investments. Next one, deferred tax asset. If any surplus tax is paid on account of timing difference, change in the depreciation method, etc., that is called as deferred tax asset. It is exactly opposite of deferred tax liability. Long-term loans and advances. There, when the company has made any advance for more than one financial year to its employees or any other business entity or any other person for in the form of loans and advances, then it is called as long-term loans and advances. Other non-current assets. Other non-current assets means those assets which are not current in the nature will be classified as other non-current assets, but which are not fixed assets, which are not investments, which are not current assets also, will be other non-current assets. Then second part will be current assets. Current assets are further classified into 5 categories: current investments, inventories, trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents, short-term loans and advances, and other current assets. Coming to the current investments. Current investments are those investments which are made by the company for less than one financial year. Suppose company has made investment on 1st April 2020, which is matured or which is due for maturity on or before 31st March 2021. That is less than one financial year. Then such kind of investment will be called as current investments. Second one is inventories. Inventories are nothing but the closing stock lying with the company as on the date of preparing the balance sheet, such as inventory of raw material, inventory of work in progress, inventory of finished goods, that is raw material, semi-finished goods and finished goods. Whatever closing stock is lying with the company is called as inventories, and that inventories are also reflected in the current assets. Third one is trade receivables. Trade receivables are nothing but an amount of debtors recoverable from the market. What is debtors? Debtor is a person to whom the goods are sold on credit and amount is receivable from him. In the case of trade receivable, the company has to prepare age-wise classification of the debtors. That means the debtors which are due for less than 180 days, that is less than 6 months, the debtors which are due for more than 6 months. What is the reason for making age-wise classification? Can anybody give me the answer? Dear students, can anybody give me the answer? What is the age-wise classification of the debtors? Why it is necessary? The intention is, based on age-wise classification, one can decide that whether the debtors are recoverable, good, or expected to be bad. And if there is a expectation of bad debtors, then there is a necessity of making provision for debtors in the form of RDD or bad debts. That's why one must be able to make the classification whether the debtors are good or doubtful or bad. Based on that, classification can be made. Then cash and cash equivalents. Cash indicates cash in hand and cash at bank. Cash equivalent indicates balances with the bankers in the form of fixed deposits or any kind of deposits. These are called as equivalent cash, and that's why it is called as cash equivalents. Then short-term loans and advances. Short-term loans and advances are nothing but bills of exchanges, such as bills receivable discounted, then any kind of advance given to the employees for short span of time, or any kind of advance given to the supplier for short span of time are considered as short-term loans and advances. Then advance payment of income tax is also short-term advance. Other current assets. Those current assets which are not covered elsewhere, such as current investments, inventories, trade receivables, cash and equivalents, short-term loans advances, will be called as other current assets, which may include even in your fictitious assets or losses which are due for writing off in future dates. Coming to the tangible assets classification table, which is also called as gross block table of fixed assets and depreciation chart. It consists of 10 columns. In these 10 columns, we can go for column number 1, type of asset, then original cost, addition during the year, disposal during the year, closing original cost, then depreciation, opening balance, depreciation for the year, closing depreciation at the end of the year, and lastly, net value of the asset. How this can be worked out? The table number and column numbers are given in the table, and based on that class calculation, we will generate two figures. One figure is as per column number 7, depreciation for the year, which will be reflected in the profit and loss account, and as per column number 10, net value of the asset at the end of the year, which is reflected in your balance sheet. Similarly, for intangible assets, also we are supposed to prepare the table. In this table also, information of column number 7 is reflected to the profit and loss account as amortization cost, and amount reflected in column number 10 will be transferred to balance sheet as an intangible assets, which is eligible for amortization cost. In this way, this tangible and intangible assets information can be generated. Then part 2 of the format of statement of profit and loss account. Part 1 was balance sheet, part 2 is profit and loss account. This is called as vertical revenue statement or vertical income statement. Again, it consists of 5 columns: serial number, particulars, note number, current year rupees, previous year rupees. First one is revenue from operations. Second one is revenue from non-operation, that is other income. Then total revenue. From that we are supposed to deduct expenses such as cost of material consumed, purchase of stock in trade, if any, changes in inventory of finished goods and work in progress, that is either increase in the inventory or decrease in inventory, employees benefits, finance cost, depreciation and amortization expenses, and other expenses. In totality, these are called as total expenses. After that, one can get profit before exceptional and extraordinary items. Add or less exceptional or extraordinary items, then you will get profit before tax. Once you arrive at profit before tax, then you have to make the provision for taxation. Provision for taxation can be made in two ways: provision for current year tax and provision for deferred tax. Provision for current tax means a tax applicable for current year's income, and provision for deferred tax means a tax applicable for deferred liability on account of timing difference or fluctuations, as the case may be. Total tax expense or liability is deducted from the profit, and remainder is called as profit from or loss from continuing operations. In this profit or loss from continuing operations, add or less discounting or discontinuing operations, then you will get total profit or loss after tax. And sometimes on account of discontinuation, company may be liable to pay the tax, then that is tax expense on discontinuing operation is also taken into consideration. After obtaining profit oblique loss or loss after tax, one can decide what is earning per share of the company. This earning per share of the company can be calculated with the simple formula total profit available upon number of equity shares or number of ordinary shares. That is your basic earning per share. If company is having some sort of quasi equity capital, that is a convertible capital or redeemable capital in the form of debt presently but converted afterwards into equity, then by applying total profit upon number of existing equity shares plus proposed equity shares to be proposed, the liability debt to be converted into equity will be denominator, and based on that what is EPS calculated will be called as diluted EPS. Appropriation of items. Whenever you get the profit, net profit, in our example, operating balance, opening balance as per item number 12 of the previous slide. In that net profit, add or less previous year's profit or loss as the case may be, then you will get closing profit available for appropriation or total profit available for appropriation. From that, during the year, whatever appropriation is made, such as transfer to general reserve, transfer to capital redemption reserve, transfer to dividend equalization reserve, transfer to other reserves such as development rebate reserve, sinking fund reserve, etc. Then final preference dividend for previous year. Previous year means last year. Final preference dividend for equity shares, provision for dividend distribution tax, provision for interim dividend if any payable for the in between year. All such appropriations will be deducted, and finally remaining profit is transferred to balance sheet in the reserves and surplus. Then payment of dividend and creation of statutory reserve. In case of company, if it is making payment of dividend to the extent of 10% of its paid up capital, there is no necessity of creating statutory reserve. Or if no dividend is paid, there is no necessity of creating statutory reserve. But if dividend is paid ranging between 10 to 12.5%, then 2.5% of the current year's profit should be created for statutory reserve. If dividend is ranging between 12.5 to 15%, then at least 5% of the net profit should be transferred to statutory reserve. If dividend is payable between 15 to 20%, then at least 7.5% of the net profit should be transferred to statutory reserve. And if dividend is payable 20% and above, that is above 20%, at least 10% of the net profit should be created towards statutory reserve. Next one is managerial remuneration. As per section 197 of the Companies Act 2013, total managerial remuneration payable to its directors shall not exceed 11% of the net profit calculated in the manner as per section 198. A company may authorize payment exceeding 11% in certain circumstances if it has passed a special resolution of shareholders for same and prior approval of the lenders whose dues are pending is taken. After these two conditions are fulfilled, company may exceed the managerial remuneration exceeding 11% also. In brief, how the remuneration is to be paid. Directors including managing director and whole-time director and its manager, the total remuneration should not exceed 11% or it must be maximum limit of 11% of net profit. Only one managerial person, that is either MD or whole-time director or manager is there, your managerial remuneration should not be more than 5% of the net profit. If more than one managerial personnels are there, such as MD and whole-time director is there, or whole-time director and manager is there, that is minimum 2 persons may be there, then total managerial remuneration should not exceed 10% of the net profit. And lastly, if remuneration payable to the directors who are neither managing director nor whole-time director, in case there is MD or whole-time director or manager, then 1% of the net profit will be paid as a managerial remuneration. In other cases, it will be 3% of the net profit as a managerial remuneration. Preparation of final accounts of the companies mainly focuses on following items. Number 1, company final accounts consist of profit and loss account and balance sheet, as just now we have discussed. Final accounts have to be prepared in vertical format only, very important part. Third point, there is a standard format as per Schedule 3 of the Companies Act 2013. Just now we have discussed how the format, vertical format part 1 and part 2 is presented. Part 1 is for balance sheet and part 2 is for income statement. Next point, interest on debentures. If the company has borrowed capital in the form of debentures, on such debentures, whatever interest is paid is to be taken into consideration. If interest is not paid but to be paid, it is payable, that is due but not paid, or due accrued but not due, due and accrued but not paid. Accordingly, adjustment for provision has to be made. Advance payment of income tax, if any, provision for income tax, if any, should be taken into consideration. Proposed dividend and interim dividend adjustment should be taken into consideration. Calls in arrears and forfeiture of shares has to be accounted for appropriately while doing the necessary adjustments. Discount on issue of shares and debentures. If the shares and debentures are issued at discount, then what treatment should be given for issue of discount on issue of shares and debentures, one has to take into consideration. Then treatment of contingent liabilities. Contingent liability is a footnote to the balance sheet. If any liability which may occur on future dates, regarding that, the treatment should be given in the form of writing the information below the balance sheet. Then disputed tax liabilities. A tax liability may be disputed. Disputed means officer might have demanded 100 rupees and company has paid 80 rupees. That means difference will be called as 20 rupees as a disputed liabilities. Regarding that disputed liabilities, treatment has to be given in company final accounts. Market value of investments. Whenever investments are invested in the by the company at certain cost, but its market value may be different. In such case, company has to make appropriate provision for market value, face value, and cost of the investment made by the company in the form of long-term investments or non-current investments. Appropriate presentation is expected to be made in the final account. This was a presentation for final accounts topic of financial